Bonjour Joe.
Bonjour. Bonjour.
Ma première question va concerner votre première commande en fait. J'aimerais savoir comment elle s'est présentée à vous, sachant que pendant longtemps, votre exercice de journaliste en bande dessinée avait peu de reconnaissance.
Ooh, I have to remember that one. I think it was Time magazine. And I think the situation was I knew a filmmaker who knew the editor of Time magazine. And we had dinner together, and I think he just asked me if I'd be interested in doing something, and I was a little surprised. So then we started to discuss it, and I thought, okay, he's serious. This isn't something he said after 5 drinks. And then it developed.
J'ai remarqué que chacun de ces reportages avait été pour vous l'occasion de réfléchir sur votre pratique en tant que journaliste. J'aimerais que vous nous expliquiez quelles sont selon vous aujourd'hui encore les contraintes les plus importantes que vous rencontrez lorsque vous obéissez à une commande. Est-ce qu'il y a des contraintes aujourd'hui qui vous gênent encore dans le fait de répondre à une commande?
Well, I find the difficulties are sometimes self-imposed. For example, with Time magazine, I don't think that story was a very good story. I think the problem I had was that even though I have a very definite sense of what I'm doing, when Time magazine asked me to do something, I began to think, how would a Time magazine correspondent do this story? So I think I froze up a little, and I wasn't sure of myself, even though in my own work I'd been very sure of myself. But since then, I've decided the reason they ask me to do these things is because they respect my work, and so maybe I should just respect my work too and do it that way.
J'ai remarqué aussi, ce livre est l'occasion de remarquer à quel point vous êtes capable de varier dans votre approche du dessin. J'aimerais savoir quelles sont les décisions qui président à vos choix esthétiques en fonction des reportages. Je pense particulièrement à cette histoire qui s'appelle Down and Up, où le trait est très épais, ou parfois l'utilisation de la couleur.
Well, I used color because the magazine said, you have to do this story in color. But I didn't know how to use color, and I still don't know. So I contacted someone who knows how to do computer color, and she colored the piece. And some of the pieces, like Down Up, are more simply drawn because the main focus is on the soldiers. It's a story about US Marines trying to train Iraqi soldiers how to fight. So the background wasn't so interesting. In fact, it was distracting. And I thought, okay, this is going to be told more simply. And some of the other stories, for example, the one about African migrants trying to come to Europe and the India story, the deadline was a bit tight. And I thought I have to draw quicker, and it cannot be the most detailed thing I've ever done. But the story about the Chechen refugees, I had time to do that, so you can see I would draw the fabric of the clothes in this strange, extravagant way. I think comics is a very plastic medium, and you can adapt your style depending on how quickly you need to get something done, how much time you have, and other requirements.
Donc c'est plutôt des préoccupations d'ordre technique plus que créatives.
Sometimes it's philosophical or aesthetic, for example in Down Up, and sometimes it's a matter of time. How much time do I have to draw this?
Alors justement, à propos de temps, ce qui caractérise ce travail-là, ce qui le distingue probablement de vos autres travaux, c'est que vous restez des périodes très courtes de temps à chaque fois pour réaliser ces reportages. Je voudrais savoir comment vous travaillez sur place du coup pour récupérer autant de matière avec beaucoup moins de temps que d'habitude.
I'm a very good journalist.
Je suis un très bon journaliste.
I work. I mean, it's from as soon as we can start working, we're working until as late as we can go. And usually the determining factor is how exhausted the translator or guide is. And sometimes, I spent about a month in Iraq, but I think at least almost 2 weeks of that was waiting for helicopters.
J'ai une question aussi sur la représentation. En fait, ce livre m'a beaucoup intéressé là par rapport à Gaza 1956. Parce que dans Gaza 1956, il y a une recherche sur comment représenter des scènes auxquelles on n'a pas assisté, d'après témoignage. Et en fait, ce livre est souvent sujet à ce problème. Mais là, les représentations sont très pleines et très dramatiques. Je voulais savoir si aujourd'hui il le referait de la même manière.
Well, in Gaza 1956, it's a very controversial subject. And if I'm going to talk about something that happened in the past, I have to try to represent that as closely as I can to what happened. So I walked the grounds of where these things happened. A lot of it happened in a schoolyard. The school still exists. I walked through the school. I took pictures of the school. I had people show me where they were sitting in the school. There are ways you can try to get as much as you can out of the people who are still surviving. And the panels, for example, that go into the history of Chechnya, as you say here, yes, you're right, they represent large historical episodes. There's a picture of Russian soldiers in the 1800s killing Chechens. Now, how do I do that? Well, you can research the uniform of the Russian soldiers. I mean, the uniform is actually correct. Now, no one really pays attention to that when they're reading, maybe, but I need to try, whenever possible, to get those sorts of details right. Then, for example, there's a picture of a Russian soldier shooting a mother and her child. Now, I'm not commenting on a specific scene, but I've now read enough about what happened there, where there's Russian women testifying to what happened around them, what they saw, and I use that testimony in drawings without necessarily making a reference or a footnote to it. In the story I have about the Hague War Crimes Tribunal, I show a scene of Srebrenica. And there are many bodies in a ditch, and there are Serb soldiers drinking. And the editor said, "Are you sure they were drinking when this was going on?" But if you actually read accounts of what happened, I mean, soldiers were drinking. You stay drunk so you can kill people. I mean, this is in the accounts.
Alors, j'aimerais qu'il parle un peu de son expérience de reporter en Irak auprès des forces américaines. C'est un épisode que j'aime, je les aime tous beaucoup, mais celui-là je l'aime bien parce qu'il est un peu particulier. J'ai l'impression qu'il teste sa subjectivité, sa capacité à ne pas juger. J'aime bien cet épisode-là pour ça, parce qu'il se met en défaut. J'aimerais qu'il en parle si...
There are many people that I respect, many other journalists or political commentators who'll say the process of embedding journalists in the American forces is a very bad thing for journalism. And it's true that, especially when I was there, it was almost impossible to get the civilian side of what was going on. It was simply too dangerous. And the thing is, when I was with the Palestinians, living in a refugee camp, I felt embedded with the Palestinians. To me, the whole point is to get an understanding of what the soldiers are thinking and how they're feeling, what they are feeling. When I was first in some of the vehicles driving in the desert, when an Iraqi car would come, I noticed that all these soldiers would duck down. And I thought, what are they worried about? Well, they're worried about suicide car bombers. And the strange thing is, by the end of my time there, I was doing the exact same thing and behaving in the exact same way and suspicious in the same way. Because to me, the story there was paranoia. It's people with guns who are afraid that something's going to happen to them, and you realize a mistake can be made very quickly.
Je vais demander au public s'ils ont des questions.
Bonsoir.
Bonsoir.
Votre métier, du coup, c'est journaliste ou dessinateur ou les deux?
I think of myself as a cartoonist who happens to work in journalism. But I prefer to think of myself as a cartoonist because sometimes I want to do something funny in cartoon form.
Et du coup, question un peu liée, est-ce que vous pensez que par le dessin, on peut faire passer plus de choses, plus de détails ou de sensibilité que par de la photo ou par du texte, ce qui se fait de manière plus classique dans un reportage?
I have great respect for photojournalism and for writers. In fact, I think that every medium has its strengths. You know, a photograph captures something, and okay, I know that things can be manipulated, but generally the idea is this is a real picture of something real that's happened. I mean, think of that. Do you know the photograph from the Vietnam War of the Saigon police chief shooting the Viet Cong suspect? Do you know this photograph? It's like they're shooting him.
Important.
Thanks, Joe.
I mean, it's strange to say, but this is sort of a perfect. The photographer, he clicked the shutter at exactly the right moment to get this perfect image of something that was happening. When you're drawing, you can always draw that perfect moment. There's no luck involved. And there's a power in that, but it's a power that can be abused also. The thing I like about writing is it's almost like the opposite of drawing. It allows you to create the images in your head. But I think as an animal, we're very visual. And it helps us to empathize with people if we can see their faces. And images help us. They can take us into the streets of a refugee camp. And a writer can do a lot, but it's very difficult for a writer to describe certain things so well. I mean, I'll give you an example. If I'm drawing a refugee camp, every single image might have the background. And in every single image, it might be mud in the street. Now, a writer can say there was mud in the street, but a writer cannot tell you after every sentence that there was mud in the street. Many drawings with this in the background, you don't have to say a thing. The reader feels it in every single panel, no matter what is being told in the foreground. But the truth is, I get most of my information from prose, from writing.
We have still time.
My question is in English. In Palestine, your book, you often, when you were taking interviews, people often would tell you that what's gonna change with your book. So something like that. There were many books. There will be many books. But have you told them, these people, that your book was gonna be a comic book? What was their reaction if you told them so? Well, I'm just curious. It's not a very deep question.
The truth is, and that's a good question. The truth is, that was my first book of journalism, and I was very unsure of myself and what I was doing at that time. So I usually would say, I'm doing a journalistic project. So it's very vague. But if I got to know someone, I tried to explain what I was going to do. And many Palestinians said, that's okay, we have this great Palestinian cartoonist named Najil al-Ali. And he really means a lot to the Palestinian people. His famous character is, you see it on jewelry or on the wall. It's even part of graffiti. And he was assassinated in London in the 80s, but he's like a very revered figure. When I did the book Gaza 1956, I was sure of what I was doing. So I brought the book Palestine with me. And when I was going to sit down and interview one of the older people, I said, this is the way I'm doing this story. And what's interesting is most of these people didn't read English. If this book was in prose, they would have just handed it back to me and said, that's nice, you know. So when they opened up the book, they could see how I'd drawn a Palestinian refugee camp, and they could see themselves. They could see, oh, this is this place. They understood what I was doing, and they got it right away. And then that helped me, because then I could ask questions that were very visual. Like, normally a journalist doesn't ask someone, in 1956, do you remember what you were wearing on that day? I mean, that's a strange example, but they understood why I was asking visual questions.
Which is actually your favorite American comics, the one you like most?
And it can't be mine. My favorite comic is probably something very old. The old Mad comics, the work of Harvey Kurtzman. And the other one, because he's such a great influence on me, is Robert Crumb, his work. I mean, I learned so much looking at his work and seeing how every object seemed to have a soul.
Merci beaucoup, Jo.
Merci beaucoup. Merci.